Michael Afton's life is a tragic story of guilt, parental neglect, and zombification, but at the same time, it's a tale of hope and how one man's desire to set things right and to undo the sins of his father can help him triumph over even the worst demons hell has to offer. Mike's compelling character arc and the mystery surrounding his life, and the part he plays in the events that transpire in FNAF, keep us coming back to him over and over again, even if his part in the story is over. You see, Mike was our protagonist in the original FNAF games. We see the world through his perspective in the first 6 games, excluding the mini-games in Jeremy Fitzgerald, but that's a story for another day. But one thing I think we can all say for sure, that Michael was destined for tragedy from the start, being born as the first child of William Afton, a man who would go on to murder at least 6 children in his selfish quest for immortality. Hey, I'm Soda, and welcome to the Cherry Soda broadcast. I know for a while I've been mentioning that I would make a Mike video, so here it is. I just wanted to go over a few things I noticed in the FNAF games that I haven't heard people talk about, as well as an overall look at his character and the journey that he follows. If you're interested in FNAF or analysis videos or just hearing me talk, please leave a like and subscribe. I'm trying to get 500 subscribers by Halloween, so go hit that subscribe button. I have a lot more in store for you guys, and I'm really excited to show you. So with that being said, let's talk about Mike. So we're not given a lot of information about Mike from the original FNAF material. I'm talking about the first 6 games and the logbook. From these, we can learn 3 different things about him. That his name is Mike and he likes chewing gum and watching TV. All 3 of these facts can be found throughout the logbook, but I think there's a lot more within it that is easy to miss. Kind of on the surface level, we can see through his drawings and his little notes that Mike is a somewhat sarcastic and snarky person. He doesn't really seem to enjoy working at Freddy's. But to be honest, like, who would? We also see that he seems to be very talented at drawing and does it a lot throughout the book, so it must be a passion. And this is just kind of speculation on my part and a little bit off topic, but I've always wondered if Mike is a self-insert for Scott. I mean, obviously not for everything that Mike goes through, but the fact that they're both Gen X and they both seem to have a passion for art, with Scott even attending art school, and both of them seem to have a similar kind of sarcastic humor. I feel like a lot of people overlook this in the original FNAF games, but the phone guy dialogue is genuinely very funny.
The animatronic characters here do get a bit quirky at night.
Although it could just be a case of art imitating the artist. But I definitely think the inclusion of the doodles is very interesting in the logbook. Maybe Mike had a passion for art at some point in his life, but probably gave up on it. Probably the most clear depiction we get of Mike ever is in the FNAF movie. And listen, I know it's a different continuity, but hold on. Movie Mike can't keep a job and is a troubled individual, which I think also applies to the game Mike. And he's also prone to violent outbursts when triggered by something. When he gets triggered by something, like at the mall when he thought he was witnessing a child being kidnapped when it was actually just a father and son. We know that Game Mike has some violent tendencies. We see this in 1983 when he hangs out with the bullies and when he shoves Dave's head into Fredbear's mouth. Although I don't think I would really classify this as violent as beating someone up at a mall. I honestly believe that he had no idea that would happen, just because I think honestly anyone would not expect that to happen. Actually, like, good question, why on earth is Fredbear's jaw strong enough to break someone's skull? Why does he need that much power if he's just lip syncing to songs? Once I figure that out, I'll tell you guys, I promise. But even in FNAF 4, I think Michael acting out is pretty justified, in a way. If you haven't watched my Afton divorce video, go ahead and give it a watch because I talk more about it. But I genuinely do think that in FNAF 4, at least, the family was going through a separation or was recently separated, which could explain why he was being aggressive. On top of that, William is his father, so he probably doesn't really have the best example for what's normal behavior. And Movie Mike also had trauma, I think, because of his brother getting kidnapped. So I don't think Mike in general is a malicious character. Another thing we learn about Mike in the movie is that he's dependent on sleeping pills. He uses them pretty often, I would say probably every night, to go back into his dreams to try to remember things about Garrett's disappearance. And there's also evidence in the game that Game Michael uses sleeping pills as well. In the FNAF 4 bedroom, we can see a couple different things that appear as Easter eggs in the background. Now you could say, oh, Soda, well, of course there's bottles of pills at the nightstand because people take pills when they're in hospitals, right? And the crying child is dying from being bitten by Fredbear, so that's why they're present along with the IV, right? And to that I would say, You might be right about the IV, but one important thing I think we forget is that people who are in comas or who are severely injured will not be able to take pills. When they do need medication, it's usually given to them via IV or injection, but it would probably not be possible for someone who is in a coma to take a pill. A person in a coma would also not need to use an alarm clock, but you know who would? Mike, if he needed to get up early for work. And we know that Mike is the one who experiences the nightmares we see during the gameplay section of FNAF 4 because Nightmare of Fredbear is drawn in the logbook. So it could be possible that the nights of FNAF 4 are just the nightmares that he has when he uses sleeping pills. Maybe he's guilty about what happened to Dave and he feels like he has to punish himself. This could be why Fredbear and Nightmare are present, and honestly if we ignore didophobia then the nightmare animatronics could just be manifestations of his guilt, as well as maybe just trauma responses for everything he's had to endure throughout his investigation of Freddy's trying to put the missing children to rest. I was also thinking that the sleeping pills didn't necessarily have to be sleeping pills either. They could potentially be pain medication or a different kind of medication entirely. You cannot tell me that you would not have chronic pain after being used as a skin suit by Ennard. That would probably cause some serious issues internally for you. And on top of that, it would probably give you some kind of mental issue. Maybe this could have been why there's an IV and flowers in the room too. It doesn't necessarily have to be for Dave, but maybe it was for Michael after he was used by Ennard. If I were one of his neighbors, I would probably call an ambulance or something after watching him puke out a bunch of metal into a storm drain. But I think after this he probably healed a little bit and returned to looking somewhat normal because of the remnant. There's no way that he didn't heal at least a little bit because the tension that walking around would put on a body, especially a corpse, would probably make it fall apart in less than a year. And not to mention, I don't think anyone would hire anyone if they came to a job interview looking like King Ramses II. On top of the vivid nightmares and probably the mental stress that Ennard caused, we can definitely see that Michael is not doing very well mentally. I mean, in the logbook, when asked where he sees himself in 5 years, he just draws a gravestone, which is a little bit funny. And his willingness to die in Pizzeria Simulator definitely tells us that he maybe struggles with suicidal ideation. A lot of his motives surround trying to undo all the terrible things that William has done, which has always reminded me of the effort that some people make to break a negative cycle in their family history. Michael knows that he's messed up in the past, but instead of staying in the past and continuing to let himself get worse and hurt more people, he tries to redeem himself and really seems to be motivated by the possibility of putting his family back together. After all, it was this that brought him to the sister location bunker in the first place. Which brings us to our next point, his relationship with William, his father. Now Mike looks a lot like his father, so much in fact that it's pretty common for the animatronics to get confused and take out their anger wrongly on him. And on top of that, Michael and William have a very similar way of speaking and an accent. Now, the only time we really hear Michael talk in the games is in this cutscene right here. So I think this cutscene takes place after he's been possessed by the children, after Ennard's used him as a skin suit to escape. Maybe he's been processing everything as he recovers from the whole thing, and is going over everything he learned in his mind. If Cassidy and his siblings were both in there, they definitely told him everything, which I think is really illustrated in the sadness in his voice. In his speech, we can still hear that he has somewhat of a love for his father, but at the same time, he sounds like he's in disbelief. The ending is really interesting because we can hear him get a little bit more threatening. Let's give it a listen.
Father, it's me, Michael. I did it. I found it. It was right where you said it would be. They were all there. They didn't recognize me at first, but then they thought I was you. And I found her. I put her back together, just like you asked me to. She's free now. But something is wrong with me. I should be dead, but I'm not. I've been living in shadows. There is only one thing left for me to do now. I'm going to come find you. I'm going to come find you.
Maybe it's in this moment that Michael finally realizes that his father really had no intention of putting anyone back together. They were all there is most definitely the spirits, and now that all of his worst fears have now been confirmed, there's only one more thing left for him to do, and that's to find William and make him pay. Sister Location also gives us a better look at how William Afton is just in general, from the very first scene to where we hear him talking for the first time, to Immortal and the Restless, which is probably a very fair depiction of what it was like to talk to him about anything ever. I know that some people theorize that Immortal and the Restless is actually supposed to be Fazbear Entertainment and the public, but I think it could possibly be both at the same time. And Michael saying that he relates to Clara the most definitely speaks to this representing him and his father. It's a metaphor for how William constantly shuts him down when he asks about the weird stuff that happens at Freddy's, but Mike just can't listen to him. He knows something is wrong, but he can't really put his finger on what. And never in a million years would he ever suspect that William would do any of the horrible things that he's capable of. I mean, Michael definitely knew about the nightmare experiments and was subjected to them, but it would have probably been extremely painful for him to even suspect that William would be capable of killing people. And something I don't really hear people talk about much, but the room where we actually watch Immortal and the Restless is extremely interesting to me. You see, this room, although we've never seen it before Sister Location, is weirdly familiar. We get the same lamps from FNAF 4, as well as the same wallpaper trim, and the same style of furniture, and even very similar photographs to the ones that we see in the hallway. Now, this could mean that Michael just has really similar tastes to William and just decorates his house almost identically to his childhood home, or it could mean that he just never moved out. He never left William's home, he never gained independence. I mean, why would he? He doesn't have anywhere else to go, which William would honestly love, Michael being isolated and completely under his control as an adult, with no outside influence from anyone. Also, the area that Michael walks through, the neighborhood, has a lot of houses, and everyone there seems to know him and like him a lot, so it could be possible that they've known him for a very long time. And with $100 a week, I don't really think Michael could afford a house of his own. On top of that, the FNAF 4 room never really struck me as a child's bedroom, specifically with the bed. Personally, when I was young, I don't really remember any of my friends sleeping in double beds when they were super young, unless they just slept with like an older sibling or their parents or something. And Dave is like 5 to 7 years old, so I don't really understand why he'd have such a giant bed. I mean, if you remove the toys and the somewhat childish furniture from the FNAF 4 room, it would probably just look like an adult's room. And since the gameplay is implied, well, it's pretty much confirmed to take place in some kind of nightmare state, it could just be a warped version of the room that Michael's in real life. But honestly, I feel bad for Mike. Imagine living with this guy for like 30 years of your life. And despite everything, despite accidentally killing your brother, getting brainwashed by your dad, then getting your insides scooped out, only to be turned into a zombie, Mike still was able to free the spirits of the children and go to heaven with his siblings. I think it's pretty safe to say that not only is he a pretty cool guy, he was also able to successfully redeem himself. And with that being said, that's about it. I just wanted to talk to you guys about Mike and tell you a little bit about him and things I've noticed, and kind of just honestly my favorite things about his character. I really like how his personality and the little bits about him are sprinkled around in the games and books. And honestly, I just like him a lot, and I'm pretty excited to see Josh Hutcherson in the FNAF 2 movie to see what he does with him. Movie Mike is definitely very different than Scott Games Mike, but I really like where his character is going and how he's portrayed. And honestly, he's such a sweetheart. Please, I do not want Springtrap to kill him. And thank you all so much for watching. I can't believe how close we are to 500 subs right now. You guys are seriously blowing my mind. And spooky season is right around the corner, so stay tuned for some scary surprises. And have a great day. Like and subscribe and all that good stuff, and let's try to get to 500 before Halloween.